The Dothraki are the one people in Game of Thrones that everyone else is terrified of. Horse lords who live and die in the saddle. They don't build cities, they don't wear armor, and they don't lose. When they cross the grass sea, kingdoms don't fight them, they pay them or they run. Khal Drogo could put 40,000 screaming riders on the horizon, and the civilized world, with all its walls and knights and gold, could do exactly nothing about it. Now here's the part that should stop you. There was a people who lived like that, out on an endless ocean of grass, on horseback, dismissed as filthy savages by every walled city that had heard of them, right up until they rode out and conquered more of the planet than anyone before or since. And there Khal Drogo, born with nothing, outcast, starving, enslaved as a boy. He clawed his way up to unite every last one of those horse tribes under a single banner, and build the biggest empire the world has ever seen. His name was Genghis Khan. Let me show you the Dothraki that history actually remembers. This is real roots, the real history behind the stories you love. Start with the grass, because the world of the Dothraki isn't invented, it's a place you can stand in today. The Dothraki Sea, that flat endless ocean of grass Daenerys crosses, that's the Eurasian steppe. It runs for thousands of miles across the middle of Asia. And it is exactly what the show describes. Grass to the horizon, in every direction. No walls, no borders, no end. And for thousands of years it did something specific to the people who lived on it. It made them into the most feared warriors on earth. Here's why. You can't farm the steppe. The soil and the weather won't allow the kind of settled crop farming that builds towns and cities. So the people who lived there didn't farm. They followed the herds. They lived on horseback, moved with the seasons, and carried their whole world with them. And a life like that turns out to be an incredible training program for war. Every man is already an expert rider before he's 10. Every hunt is already a cavalry maneuver. There's no line between herdsman and soldier. They're the same person. Which is why the Dothraki despise walls and dirt farmers, and mean it as an insult. That contempt is lifted straight from the steppe. The nomads looked at settled people, penned into cities tied to one patch of ground, soft, and genuinely pitied them. And the settled people looked back at the nomads and saw savages. Both were wrong about each other, and one of those mistakes was about to get a lot of people killed. So let's meet the man. Because the show gives you Drogo already powerful, a great Khal at the height of his strength. The real story is the part the show skips. How you get there from nothing. His birth name was Temujin, and he was born into chaos. The steppe tribes were splintered, constantly feuding, raiding each other, stealing horses and women and settling scores. 100 small Khalasars, all at each other's throats, which is exactly the state the Dothraki are in when we meet them. And Temujin started at the bottom of even that. When he was a boy, a rival tribe poisoned his father. And the moment his father was gone, his own clan abandoned the family, left his mother and her children out on the steppe to die. Because feeding fatherless boys was a waste of food. They survived on roots and fish and whatever they could catch. And Temujin grew up in a world that had taught him, early and hard, exactly how it worked. He was captured and enslaved at one point, a wooden collar locked around his neck, and he escaped. Every advantage other leaders were born with, he had to take. And slowly, through alliances, through loyalty he earned, and betrayals he survived, and battles he won, he started pulling the shattered tribes together. Not by blood, by results. He rewarded followers based on merit instead of birth, which on the steppe was almost revolutionary, and men flocked to a leader who'd actually reward them. And in the year 1206, the assembled tribes of the steppe gave him a new name, Genghis Khan. It means something close to universal ruler, and it was not modest. Every warring horse tribe, the whole feuding grass sea, unified under one man for the first time. Remember the show's warning, the thing everyone's afraid of? That if a single Khal ever united all the Khalasars, he'd have a horde no power on earth could stop. That's not a fantasy scenario, that's a documentary. Genghis did the exact thing the show only threatens, and then he turned that unified horde outward, at the world. And the world had no answer for it. To understand why, you have to understand a weapon, and the weapon was the man on the horse. A steppe warrior could do something that sounds almost made up. Fire a bow, accurately from the back of a horse at a full gallop, including turning and firing backward over the horse's rear while retreating. A move so associated with these people, it got its own name, the Parthian shot. Think about what that means on a battlefield. Your enemy is cavalry, so they're fast. They're also archers, so they can kill you from 200 yards. And they never have to stop moving to do either. A knight in heavy armor, built for one glorious head-on charge, simply could not catch them and could not close the distance before being shot to pieces. And they were disciplined, which is the part that surprises people who expect a screaming mob. Mongol armies maneuvered on signals, flags, horns, in total coordination. Their favorite trick was the feigned retreat, pretend to break and flee, draw the enemy into a disorganized chase, then wheel around and destroy them once they'd strung themselves out. They'd ride hundreds of miles, faster than anyone believed possible, and appear where no army was supposed to be. This is why in the show, nobody wants to meet the Dothraki in open battle. Against horse archers who won't stand still and won't stop shooting, a wall of knights is just a slower, shinier target. And then there was terror, used on purpose. A city that surrendered was generally spared and taxed. A city that resisted was made into an example so horrifying that the next city would think very hard about surrendering. The reputation did half the fighting before an arrow was ever loosed. Cities opened their gates out of pure dread. The Dothraki's fearsome name doing the work for them? Same weapon. So how far did it actually go? This is where the real thing leaves the show behind. The Mongol Empire became the largest connected land empire in the history of the world. Not one of, the largest. It stretched from the Pacific coast of China all the way to the edge of Europe, Korea to Hungary, Siberia down into Persia. Genghis and the sons and grandsons who came after him conquered more of the earth in a few decades than Rome managed in centuries. From a starving outcast boy on the steppe to an empire spanning most of a continent inside a single lifetime and the one after it. And the great cities, the proud, walled, civilized cities that had spent centuries looking down on the horse nomads as animals, those cities fell. The Mongols took the capital of northern China. They swept through the empires of Central Asia and wiped some of them off the map entirely. And in 1258, Genghis's grandson took Baghdad, the richest, most learned city in the medieval world, the center of a golden age, home to libraries that were the envy of civilization. The siege ended it. The city was sacked so thoroughly that it never again became what it had been. The jewel of the world, humbled by the descendants of the men everyone had called savages. That's the underestimation the show is built on, played out for real. The knight, the lord, the city dweller, they all looked at the man on the steppe horse and saw someone beneath them. And it was the last mistake a lot of them ever made. But here's the turn. The part the show never shows you, and it's the part that makes these people genuinely fascinating instead of just frightening. They weren't only destroyers. Once the conquering slowed and the empire settled, the Mongols did something almost no one expects. They ran it well. For about a century, that enormous territory was safer and more connected than it had ever been. Historians call it the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace. With one power controlling the whole span of Asia, the Silk Road, the great trade route between East and West, became safe to travel end to end for the first time. Goods, technology, and ideas flowed across the entire continent. Gunpowder, printing, knowledge that reshaped the world moved west along roads the Mongols made secure. They ran a sophisticated relay system for messages, riders and way stations spanning thousands of miles, so information moved across the empire at a speed Europe wouldn't match for centuries. And for the era, they were strikingly tolerant about religion. The empire held Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, and others, and by and large let them worship as they pleased, sometimes even exempting their clergy from taxes. The screaming savages of the settled world's nightmares turned out to be on the far side of the conquest, some of the most effective administrators of their age. Which is the whole point, really. The men on the horses were never what the walled cities thought they were. They were dismissed as a mindless horde right up until the horde was at the gate, and by then it was much too late to reconsider. So the Dothraki are invented. Khal Drogo is invented. But the endless grass, the horse lords who ruled it, the outcast boy who united the tribes and terrified the world, The walls that meant nothing against men who fought from the saddle. None of that had to be imagined. It's on the map, in the record, in the ruins of the cities that learned the lesson the hard way. Drogo is a character. Genghis Khan did the thing the show is afraid to let happen. This has been Real Roots, the real history behind the stories you love. And next time, I want to take you back to the oldest adventure ever written down. A soldier trying to get home from a war. A voyage full of monsters. And the question of how much of it actually happened. The Odyssey.